I have spent possibly way too much time roasting and reacting to all of your trash and rancid, ew, Xenoblade Chronicles hot takes. They were boiling, they were bubbling, they were sizzling. From being emotionally scarred by some of them, to spending way too much time countering them, it has been a seemingly one-sided street, where you provide trash hot takes, and I roast them. The reverse hasn't really been allowed to happen. Mainly because my takes on Xenoblade are so pure and so incredibly, well, incredible, that any disagreement is merely laughable because I have a YouTube channel on the internet. So checkmate! Haha, that'll show 'em. How can you simply disagree with perfection? But I decided, you know, and I gotta sit up for this one. I have a bit of a hot take for Xenoblade that I haven't talked about all that much. I may have referenced it in the past. I haven't really gone deeply into it, at least recently. And you know what? Fair is fair. Never say that I wasn't fair to you all. I shall provide my own hot take for you all to roast and react to in the comments down below. And this is going to be unpopular. I know it's going to be unpopular, but like a valiant warrior on the brink of death, standing on the last, or as the last bastion of defense against an innumerable foe, I shall not falter, knife in mouth, I shall not waver, for this take is mine and mine alone. And once I give it, all I ask is that you hear me out and let me cook. Give me the time to explain why I feel the way that I do, and then you can judge me all you want in the comments down below. Okay, Jmulls, okay. Showtime. In 3, 2, 1. Xenoblade 3 has my least favorite main party in the series. Okay, settle down there. Wait a minute. Pitchforks down. A few disclaimers. It is close. And I still really like the party of Xenoblade 3. There's no character that I actively dislike. And I'm talking about main party here, so not like the side characters. But if you tell me to pick 2, or even 4 if we count Torna and Future Redeemed, 5 if we count Future Connected, 5 main parties to keep and 1 to unfortunately cast aside, 3 is on my proverbial chopping block. Now, the game I said was close to 3 for me was the cast of 1, and well, let me explain. So why not 2? Well, a few reasons. 1, if you ever watched my channel, you know I love 2. I think the cast of 2 overall strikes a great balance between high adrenaline moments, emotional moments, and comedic relief, in which each member contributes in some form to each of those, at least in a way that appeals to me. I have a lot of nostalgia for 2, I won't deny that. It was the first Xenoblade game I ever beat, and is the one I've played the most. It's my second favorite game of all time. I hold it in very high regard. And I hold the cast of characters, especially the main party, in extreme high regard. And Torna is for a very similar reason. I love Torna, and that game's party is largely constructed of characters who grew and developed and whom I cared about from the base game, so that carried over for me. And I'm especially fond of the duo of Jin and Laura. Okay, so let's remove the 2 series from this discussion because they aren't even close to the bottom for me. Let's cover Future Redeemed real quick, and just think of the party composition. A is basically all of the aspects of Alvis from 1 that I really liked, who has more screen time and in this game is a main party member, alongside Matthew, who is a character I immediately cared about due to his bluntness and charm. Rex and Shulk are 2 of my favorite characters to begin with, and that just leaves Glimmer and Nickel, who I admit aren't my favorite of the entire cast of Xenoblade, but I think they worked really well for what Future Redeemed was, and within those constraints, I really enjoyed them and how they bounced off the other characters. And that's going to be a theme, by the way, that I'll bring up in this discussion. I'm a big fan of when parties gel together. Not just when 1 or 2 talk to 1 or 2 other characters, but when the parties truly mesh with each other, where you can pretty much pick 2 characters at random and think of some scene that you like involving those 2 interacting with each other. And sure, if you ask me for my favorite Dromark and Morag scene, I'm probably going to end up drawing a blank, but 2 more often than not abides by that idea for me. Same with Torna to a lesser extent, and Future Redeemed. For Torna, it's mostly the dynamics of Adam, Mithra, Jin, and Lore that really hard carry the game for me, as I didn't care all that much about Hugo or Aegeon, but Bridget was cool. Future Connected is just Shulk and Melia, two of my favorite characters from one in a smaller party with two Nopon, who are arguably two of my favorite Nopon in the entire series, with Kino and Nene. So we can remove Future Connected from the discussion as well. So that leaves us with two competitors, Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 3. Two games I truly cherish, both in my top 10 games of all time, both consisting of cast and main parties that I highly enjoy as well, but why do I rank one's party over 3? And I'll be honest with you, this is a feeling I've had since I played Xenoblade 3, but I can never really put my finger on it. And I'm not even entirely sure if I put my finger on the entirety of the issue here. It's just one of those things that boils down to personal preference at the end of the day. But for me, at least the one I've been able to nail down for why I like one's party more than 3, it's a very simple reason, and we return to my old reliable. A critique of Xenoblade 3, a critique I've made on multiple occasions, and one that does harm my overall impressions of it. A critique that made some people grasp onto it, and some others just simply bounce off of the idea, and that is pacing. Xenoblade 3, if we are talking strictly about chapters 1 through the beginning of chapter 6, when you leave the Agnes Castle, that entire chunk of the game, a significant portion, I'd argue like 80%, is one of my favorite chunks of any game I've ever had the pleasure of playing. The pacing was damn near textbook, combined with bouts of levity, wholesomeness as the party slowly regained the humanity, and high adrenaline, blood-pumping action with a bit of help from Weight of Life. I loved the themes of war and people being treated as nothing more than board pieces to be sacrificed and experimented on by those who treat the horrors and tragedy of conflict as little more than entertainment, all the while in parallel telling a story of child soldiers breaking out of their proverbial shell and shattering the shackles of the propaganda they've been chained to for so long, to get a fresh perspective not only on the world and of each other, but themselves as well, as they learn to compartmentalize all they've experienced with all they have done themselves, and trying to march ever forward into the future, all culminating in a significant tragedy in Chapter 5, where fate and will is put to the ultimate test at the eclipse. It's simply, positively riveting stuff. And when I left Agnes Castle in Chapter 6, I felt confident that the second half of the game from then on was going to be something truly special, and solidified this game as one of my favorite Xenoblades and one of my favorite games of all time. Well, it would still end up as one of my favorite games. But did you catch the wording that I used? I thought the eclipse was the halfway point when I played, when in actuality, it was like the 80% mark in terms of main story. And upon learning the game was 7 chapters, a proverbial chill ran up my spine. Oh no, are we already nearing Journey's End? The game felt like it had only just begun, but so many stories were left to be told, so many potential moments and scenarios we could undertake with the development and knowledge that we now have to flesh out the world and the cast, to rally them all together and convince them all of Ouroboros' ultimate goal. And yeah, we do kinda do that, but a large amount of it is relegated to side questing and side content in general, and the main story feels a bit rushed and slow as you make your way to Nia's hideout, do Mio's side story, Noah's side story, go on a freaking fetch quest for a boat, go to Origin, beat Zed up, job done, play Where We Belong, and then roll credits. And for me, I didn't get that final leg of the journey I so richly craved. My appetite had been whetted, anticipation had sweltered for a second half that would turn out to be a final quarter, if that. And sure, there's significant amount of side content, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't to the scale of scope I was gearing myself up towards coming out of the Eclipse section that the main story had set up. Had Xenoblade 3 kept that pacing from chapters 1 to 5 into the back end, had the main story been a little bit longer, filled with more climactic, hot, palpitating moments like chapters 1 to 5, had, where the development from all that time in game had enough time and freedom to pay off, I think 3 would have been right up there with 2 for me. but that pacing detrimentally affected my enjoyment. The way the story unfolded from chapters 1 to 5 was expert. It was so good. And then chapters 6 and 7 just felt like a different game. At least to me. Not everyone's gonna feel this way, and that's fine. I can only tell you how I personally felt. And bear in mind, this isn't a substantial critique at the end of the day, on the grand scheme of things. Hell, it's still a top 10 game ever for me. I enjoyed the game substantially. But if we're talking comparatively to other Xenoblade games, then it's a critique I must bring back up. So why do I prefer One's Party? Well, One's Party focuses a lot on Shulk, Melia, and Fiora, and I'm a fan of parties that interconnect, and I can think of scenes where party members that you can pick at a random rate interact with each other on a consistent basis. Well, for me, it's a matter of nuance, because Xenoblade 1 focuses way more on 3 characters and developing 3 characters as opposed to developing all characters simultaneously like 3 tries to do. Because I think Xenoblade 1 had a decent amount of that. Couple that with the heart-to-hearts, and sure, I'd have appreciated some voice acting there or some cinematography there, so it wasn't just plain reading, but also the game's pacing overall was just superb in my opinion. And sure, I would have liked Ryan to have a bit more time to develop those feelings of insecurity he was feeling, as he was no longer needed to protect Shulk and had to learn to walk with Shulk. Sure, I would have liked that to have gone, on a little bit more. But God, do I like his interactions with characters like Shulk, Fiora, Ricky, and Charlotte. God, do I love the dynamic between Melia and Fiora as they can learn to confide in one another and lean on each other when they need to the most. Shulk learning to stop doubting himself at the behest of everyone, especially Ryan. And Melia and Fiora and Dunban. The way that Charlotte and Melia interact. The way that Fiora and Dunban, or Dunban and Ryan, Dunban and Shulk, or Dunban and Fiora, the way they all interact with one another. The way that Fiora just happens to roast Ryan every now and then because it's the vibe, I guess. The way they all have their own little separate story going on, and how Riki can just insert himself into a scene and just showcase his life experience and his kindness. They all have an interesting and entertaining beginning, middle, and end. Whereas for 3, I get a great beginning and middle, but I'm left with an okay end for a lot of their development. And I think some of their side stories are way better than others. Now granted, I think Taion, Noah, and Mio are phenomenal, and they have great resolutions, and I love Taion's side story and how it wraps up his character pretty much. Phenomenal character. But I wanted more of a finality to their interactions with one another. More scenes of them together and growing as a party, instead of like duos that happen to be together. Especially at the end there, whereas a lot of the side content tends to focus on a separate character and or one of them at any given time. I wanted the dynamic of Lance and Senna more fleshed out significantly. Senna to have a quest line really focused on her development, and the closest I got to that was Sagiri's, and that wasn't enough for me. And sure, there were scenes of each of these characters interacting with one another, but for me, the truly memorable partnerships were Noah and Mio, Taion and Uni, Senna and Mio. And you had one really great scene before the flute swap with Senna and Noah. That was a phenomenal scene. I wanted more scenes like that, Oh yeah, and Noah and Lance. You had phenomenal dynamics in this game. You absolutely did. I just wish they, meshed a little bit more. They're gonna have meshed well enough for a lot of people, and some people are gonna rate Xenoblade 3's cast as their favorite in the franchise. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just for me, and my own personal preferences when it comes to party dynamics and party development, I wish we had a few more scenes like when they learned what a baby is. Remember when Taion, pushed his way to the front of the line so the baby could hold his finger? That was, so wholesome. It was they were learning what it means to be human. I wish we had more scenes like that. More scenes like the flute swap. But, in the second half, where these characters are really starting to come out of their shell and they're vibing and they're meshing with one another, and they can utilize all their development to solve their current problems and issues. Whereas in the second half of the game, from the end of Agnes Castle onwards, sure, you have a few interactions like that, especially in the side content, but it's not up to the level of chapters 1 to 5 in my opinion. If the game was a 10-chapter game and those chapters 6 to 10 were of the quality of 1 to 5, I'm not joking, this would have been a top 5 game of all time for me, in all likelihood. But it's like having an amazing meal, where looking at it, and you begin the meal, and it's a phenomenal experience, and you're eating it and consuming it, and it's amazing, and then you finish it, and you're like, I'm not full yet. That's my feeling with the cast of 3. They were really good. I'm not full yet. I'm not done with them yet. Now that I think about it, I really wish I came up with that analogy way before this point. But yeah, that's really my opinions on the cast of Xenoblade 3. That's my hot take of Xenoblade. Because a very often take I see in a lot of my comment sections is that Xenoblade 3 is a lot of people's favorite cast when it comes to Xenoblade. And I really do like them, but there was always just that one thing in the back of my mind where I looked at the cast of 1, 2, and 3, and I was always like, 3's cool. It's really good, like, it's cool, but when I look at 1 and 2, I'm like, yeah, the squads. I think you could also probably make an argument that 3 focuses way more time and energy on developing all the heroes as well, and you could have spent more of that time developing the main cast. Because yeah, you can point to Blade Quest in Xenoblade 2, but they weren't really like main story related, right? But some of the hero ones were in 3, and you were blocked off until you did them. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a point, I'm just like something as an observation. So I'm going to call the video there for the day. Feel free to roast me in the comments down below. I've more than earned it after all the videos and content I've gotten out of roasting all of your hot takes. Don't worry though, I'm coming back with a haymaker. Don't worry, I'm revisiting those Xenoblade 2 hot takes. I'll be back. Time will tell. So thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Hope you all enjoy roasting me in the comments, by the way. If you do, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.